चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें, बेल आइकन प्रेस करें।
Premise starring Bobby Deol in the lead role, but definitely more having to do with the business model of MX Player that allows free viewing of the series with their own choice of ads running on the platform. The second chapter starts from where we left off. Baba Nirala's growing influence has increased tenfold, so much so that the politicians are safeguarding their interests in the election by acting like sycophants to the godman. The police, especially the duo of Ujagar and Sadhu, with the aid of Dr. Natasha, aim to expose the wrongdoings in the ashram by posing as drug addicts who can get admitted in their rehabilitation center. Baba Nirala's perverse ways have only extended to ruin the married life of Satti and Babita, making him incapable of conceiving and taking advantage of a helpless soul. While Baba Nirala cautiously utilizes his influence in marketing tactics to keep the blind faith of the masses intact, with the constant aid and support from his right-hand man Bhopa, we will see whether the hollow and gruesome acts of this ashram will eventually be exposed, as we all remember the first scene of season 1, where Pammi was breaking free. How does a devoted Bhakt come to the point of revolting and running away? Will we get the answers? What will follow after that is what chapter 2 of Ashram focuses on. Here's me telling you the good and bad aspects in no particular order of this series so that you can ultimately decide whether to watch this 9-episode series on MX Player or not. Production design and scale. I'm still absolutely mesmerized of the sheer scale at which this project has been produced by both MX Player and Prakash Jha. The series, which is primarily shot in Uttar Pradesh, has scenes filled with hundreds of extras. During processions, speeches and concerts, it exists as if being shot guerrilla style in real locations. Prakash Jha has tremendous experience in handling so many elements, especially if you see his filmography and the ensemble cast and immense canvas with which he presents his stories. Ashram visually is very reflective of most of Jha's work. The attention to detail by technicians like cinematographer Chandan Kauli and production designer Uday Prakash Singh is truly remarkable. I don't think anyone can discount the visual presentation of this series. Minor details. There are many elements that will stick out like a sore thumb in the second chapter of Ashram. This is of course because the OTT viewing experience makes you look at the finer details with a sharper lens, but also because of the convenient screenplay of this chapter that makes you question the logic and point out the loopholes in the story. Even though the scale in which Ashram is presented is to marvel at, you can clearly tell in large crowds the computer-generated audience that moves in robotic unison at the far end. People who have ever played FIFA and noticed the way spectators are presented will know exactly what I'm talking about. At certain points of time, you will notice characters who have been introduced into the system to pause and for a change to self-reflect as injustice is being carried out. But this never materializes into anything. At one point of time, Dr. Natasha enters the ashram, posing as an NRI from South Africa, sporting such an awful accent that I was shocked that the otherwise vigilant and skeptical security just let go so easily. It's unintentionally funny. There are many moments of key detailing that will stand out for you, making you wonder why there are so many issues from a writing perspective. Performances. An aspect of the series that still hasn't changed are the convincing performances of the ensemble cast. Aditi Pohankar, according to me, is the standout performer of chapter 2. There is one sequence especially where she is in an awful predicament. She breaks down looking at herself in the mirror, uncontrollably splashing herself with water, making her question all the flowery images she had of the ashram and its people. Aditi, an actor that I was really impressed with the Netflix series, she has done a brilliant job, especially being a Maharashtrian pulling off the role of a wrestler from UP, but even more so her emotional arc in chapter 2 showcases her ability as a performer. While Anupriya Goenka as Dr. Natasha and Sati played by Tushar Pandey had more to do in the first chapter, they are more or less forgotten in the grand scheme of things in chapter 2. I was extremely annoyed by the character arc of Trida's character Babita. She does as is required in regards to the written material, but I'll come to her character later. Similarly, Sachin Shroff as Hukum Singh and Anil Rastogi as CM Sundarlal are convincing in their roles. The cop duo of Darshan Kumar and Vikram Kochar lend the same natural performances as they did in chapter 1, and Chandan Roy Sanyal as Bhopa keeping this sinking ship in place as the executive head is brilliant. His scenes with Baba Nirala, especially behind closed doors where he can casually swear and speak his heart, are some of the best scenes. The only notable change I saw pleasantly was finally Bobby's character was more menacing, animated and expressive. While in the first season the demeanor and body language was performed with conviction, the personality was still trying to come out of its shell, and Baba's devilish ways are expressed fully in chapter 2 and hauntingly well by Bobby Deol. Mind you, an actor that has never in his career played such a deplorable character. The haunting go. My biggest issue with this series is that essentially it should stand strong on the basis of its content, but it resorts to playing out acts of violence against women, extending it for far too long. Even though it was not fully played out, we understood the predatory ways of Baba in chapter 1 and the way it's affecting volunteers of the ashram. But there is one sequence in chapter 2 of rape that is played out for so long that I felt sick in the stomach and feared that this, more than lending to the story, quenches the thirst of some twisted perverse viewers that will clip the portion and post it on websites. The gruesome act of the Nirbhaya case was communicated in Delhi Crime through the disgusting statements of the perpetrators and the reaction of the police. It was done so brilliantly that the act of violence to be played out is not required for that intended goal or that impact to the viewer. Similarly, Aditi's performance is so bloody good that the trauma she is going through is convincingly portrayed to what happens after the gruesome act is committed. While the director has a creative choice to communicate his story the way he wants to, I think to play out an act of sexual assault was not required in this series. Canvas of opportunities. What I loved about season 1 was that it provided a bird's eye view to how the masses react to figures of influence, all on the basis of feeling, and how this inadvertently becomes the gospel truth in everyone's eyes. To carefully point out the marketing tactics and invasive ways of seeping into the subconscious of the masses is something very few people can point out. This is something that was highlighted in season 1. Sadly, we get more of the same thing in chapter 2. Other than the people just being enamored by the image of the Baba and the so-called benevolence he showcases, as the trailer pointed out, chapter 2 explores the distribution of laddus or drugs that keeps the masses hooked. Chapter 2 only scratches the surface of extending what was brilliantly established by season 1. We had a brilliant canvas of Babita becoming the second in command, the police officers going in disguise in the premises, the politicians using their clout that constantly oscillates. But we somehow, as the end came near of chapter 2, were left with the same reaction of season 1, wanting for more. Lack of character growth. It is very clear to me and should be to most viewers is that technically chapter 2 is not a new season. It is nothing but an extension of season 1. If you are expecting for the already introduced characters to be explored more, you will be disappointed, as for most of the characters they seem to be in the same predicament as they were in season 1. Pammi is still having the wrestling rivalry and preparing for nationals. Sati is still an Andhbhakt even though his ability to reproduce has been snatched away from him. While the setup for Babita's character made you believe that she will strike or do something substantial when Baba is most vulnerable, she is mostly reactionary and a bystander throughout chapter 2, which is extremely frustrating. Our right-hand man, Bhopa, is still getting the house in order as Babaji lets out his perversion. Poor Adhyan Suman singing the same line of Baba Kare Kranti started giving me a headache after some time. And the progress of the police in the case is casually left high and dry. So many characters end up in the same place. The only sense of shock you will see in this series, set up like a thriller, is in the last episode, perfectly set up for another season, which makes me come to the conclusion that this is not season 2. It is just an extension of season 1, which had 18 episodes. The real action and drama will only take place after this. Do not expect to be blown away. The 9 episodes of chapter 2